Have you ever left a conversation with your shoulders tense, replaying a harmless-sounding sentence that somehow made you feel guilty? Maybe a compliment arrived just before a request, or a simple decision suddenly became urgent, as if hesitation itself made you selfish. You felt the pull, but could not see the hand creating it. Here is what nobody tells you. The strongest pressure rarely sounds like pressure. It is not a command. It is guilt disguised as loyalty, flattery disguised as kindness, urgency disguised as necessity, and obligation planted so quietly that your decision begins to feel like your own. It isn't always what someone says, it's the emotional condition they create around your choice. Machiavelli recognized that power works best when people accept its effects without noticing its source. The ones trying to move you do not always push openly. They shape the room, narrow your options, and wait for you to carry out their intention willingly. By the end, you will be able to notice the precise moment a request becomes a lever, separate genuine connection from manufactured obligation, and create enough distance to choose without carrying someone else's agenda. You will learn to feel the strings before they tighten, because awareness gives you back the space where your judgment belongs. Before we go further, write this in the comments. I pause before I choose. This isn't for the algorithm. It's a reminder to yourself that pressure does not deserve an automatic answer. Now, let's begin. Number 1. Guilt disguised as loyalty. The first hidden lever appears when a reasonable request is wrapped in a moral accusation. Someone does not simply ask for your time, your agreement, or your silence. They suggest that refusing would reveal something unpleasant about your character. A loyal person would help. A caring person would understand. After everything they have done, how could you say no? The mechanism is simple. Guilt turns a decision into a verdict about who you are. Instead of weighing the request, you begin defending your identity. The question is no longer, do you have the capacity for this? It becomes, what kind of person refuses? That shift matters. A fair request leaves room for an honest answer. A controlling request makes your answer carry a moral penalty. It creates an invisible courtroom where the other person becomes the judge and you become the defendant. The accusation does not need to be explicit. A sigh, a pause, or a carefully chosen reminder can perform the same work. The pressure grows because you are left to complete the accusation yourself. You supply the shame, rehearse the defense, and offer the concession before anyone has openly demanded it. Machiavelli understood that people are often moved less by direct force than by the fear of losing approval, belonging, or honor. A person who can make refusal feel shameful may not need to issue an order. The pressure will complete the work. Watch for the moment the conversation moves away from the actual request and toward your supposed character. Notice phrases such as, "I guess you only care when it is convenient," or "you would do this if you valued me." Ask yourself, is the person describing a real pattern, or are they attaching a punishment to a boundary? You do not need to prove that you are good before making a decision. You only need to decide whether the request is fair, possible, and truly yours to accept. A boundary does not become cruel because another person dislikes encountering it. A refusal does not become betrayal because someone has learned to benefit from your agreement. It is not always conscience speaking. Sometimes it is conditioning wearing the voice of conscience. Number 2. Flattery that arrives with a hook. Praise can be sincere, but timing reveals what words conceal. Someone tells you that you are uniquely capable, unusually loyal, or the only person they can trust, and then a request appears beneath the compliment. The praise feels like recognition, yet it quietly assigns you a role you did not agree to play. The mechanism works through identity. When people are given a flattering description, they often feel pressure to behave consistently with it. If you have just been called the strongest person in the room, declining may feel like weakness. If you have been named the most dependable friend, protecting your time can feel like betrayal. The compliment becomes a contract without a signature. This is not an argument against receiving praise. It is a reminder to separate appreciation from obligation. Does the person admire you even when you disagree, or only when your usefulness is available? Does the warmth remain after you set a limit, or does it disappear the instant you stop complying? Machiavelli's view of human nature leaves little room for taking appearances at face value. A favorable image can be offered as generously as a gift while still serving the giver's position. The question is not whether the words sound pleasant. The question is what behavior those words are trying to purchase. Pay attention to sequence, compliment, request, emotional hesitation, then the subtle expectation that a person with your supposed qualities would naturally say yes. Why was the praise delivered before the favor? Why did the admiration need to be proven immediately? There is another clue in the size of the request. A small favor may be used to establish the identity, while a larger demand arrives later as if it were merely consistent with what has already been said. First, you are dependable. Then you are expected to be endlessly available. First, you are trusted. Then your privacy is treated as proof of disloyalty. Most people accept the flattering identity before examining the transaction. The few who stay clear can appreciate the compliment without surrendering their judgment. You can say thank you and still take time to decide. Praise is not a command, and being valued is not the same as being available. Number 3. Manufactured urgency. Some pressure does not make you feel guilty, it makes you feel late. A decision that could reasonably be considered for a day is suddenly framed as something that must be settled in the next 5 minutes. The person may call it efficiency, practicality, or a rare opportunity, but the effect is the same. Your thinking space is compressed. Urgency is powerful because the mind under time pressure reaches for shortcuts. It relies on the emotional tone of the moment instead of examining the full structure of the choice. Fear begins to impersonate evidence. The faster you must decide, the less time you have to notice what is missing. Real emergencies exist, but genuine urgency usually has a clear cause. Manufactured urgency is vaguer. It depends on phrases like, "If you do not answer now, forget it," or "There is no time to explain." The demand is not only for a decision, it is for a decision made before questions can be asked. Machiavelli recognized the advantage held by anyone who controls the conditions in which others choose. A person does not have to defeat your reasoning if they can prevent you from using it. Narrow the time, narrow the information, and the answer may appear voluntary while the environment has already selected it. Watch how urgency changes your body. Your attention narrows. Your breathing becomes shallow. You start treating the other person's agitation as proof that the situation is dangerous. But their intensity is not evidence. Their deadline is not automatically your deadline. Their inability to tolerate a pause does not establish a genuine emergency. The moment you feel rushed, do not ask only, "What should you choose?" Ask, "Who benefits from the speed? What would change if the answer came tomorrow? What information becomes unavailable because you are being pushed to respond now?" Create a pause that is proportionate to the decision. I do not make decisions under pressure. Send the details. A quick answer is not the same as a good answer. These are not dramatic confrontations. They are ways of restoring the conditions required for judgment. Most people treat delay as a danger when pressure is present. The few recognize that time is not empty space. It is a tool for separating facts from atmosphere, and a pause can expose what urgency was hiding. It is not hesitation that makes you vulnerable. It is automatic movement before you understand the direction. The person who controls the clock often appears to control nothing at all. Slow the clock, and the hidden leverage becomes easier to see. Number 4. Manufactured obligation. Obligation becomes manipulative when a favor is presented as generosity but stored as debt. Someone helps without clearly stating a condition, then later reveals that the kindness was an investment. The old favor returns in a new conversation, carrying an interest charge you never agreed to pay. The mechanism is reciprocity. Human beings naturally want balance in their relationships. When someone gives, you feel a pull to return something. That instinct supports trust when the exchange is honest. But it becomes a lever when the giver hides the terms and reveals them only when compliance is useful. Listen for the moment a past favor is introduced to settle a present disagreement. After all I have done for you, remember who was there when nobody else was. You owe me this. The issue may have nothing to do with the original help, yet the debt is brought forward to overrule your current boundary. A genuine gift does not need to become a permanent voting right over your decisions. If the person expected a specific exchange, clarity should have existed at the beginning. Hidden terms are not generosity. They are delayed negotiation. Machiavelli saw that alliances are often shaped by perceived advantage, not by the sentimental story people tell about them. That does not make every act of kindness false. It means you must examine whether support is being used to create dependence. Notice whether the favor is repeatedly placed in the center of the relationship. If every disagreement summons an old rescue, the gift has stopped being a gift in practice. It has become a credential the other person uses to outrank your present needs. Ask whether the support created freedom or whether it created a permission structure for future demands. Ask yourself, was this help freely offered, or was it repeatedly emphasized afterward? Can you decline a later request without being punished for receiving the earlier kindness? Do you feel gratitude or do you feel trapped? You are allowed to appreciate what someone did and still refuse what they now demand. Gratitude recognizes a kindness. It does not surrender your future. Most people confuse being thankful with being permanently accessible. Clear judgment keeps the two separate. Number 5. The false choice. A person may try to control you by offering options that are not truly open. You can agree now or disappoint them. You can take the unpleasant assignment or be labeled uncooperative. You can reveal private information or prove that you have something to hide. The surface contains a choice, but both roads serve the other person's objective. The mechanism is narrowing. When alternatives are presented as complete, the mind often evaluates them against each other, instead of asking whether either deserves acceptance. The frame becomes invisible. You are busy choosing between doors while someone else decides which doors are allowed to exist. This tactic often arrives in calm language. Would you rather do this today or make it a bigger problem tomorrow? Do you want to explain yourself, or should everyone draw their own conclusions? The tone may sound reasonable because the pressure is hidden inside the available options. Machiavelli's practical understanding of power would direct attention toward the arrangement, not merely the words. Whoever defines the field of choice holds an advantage before the debate begins. The strongest move is sometimes not winning within the frame, but recognizing that the frame was constructed. A narrowed frame can also make you argue against yourself. You begin selecting the less painful option, then mistake that selection for consent. The fact that one path is worse does not make the other path fair. A forced menu remains forced even when one item appears more acceptable. Notice when every acceptable answer benefits the same person. Ask, what is the option being left out? Could the decision wait? Could another person be involved? Could the request be declined? Could the issue be discussed under different conditions? You do not have to select from a menu designed to remove your boundaries. You can introduce a third option, request time, or refuse the premise entirely. Those are not the only choices. Neither option works. That question assumes something that has not been agreed. This is where composure becomes practical, not loudness, not defiance for its own sake. The ability to stand outside a narrow frame long enough to see the larger room. It is not every choice between two options. Sometimes it is a demand, wearing two masks. Number 6, emotional withdrawal as punishment. Some people control through what they remove rather than what they say. Warmth disappears after disagreement. Messages become cold. Affection is withheld. Cooperation turns into silence. The stated explanation may be, "Nothing is wrong," while the atmosphere communicates that your independence has created a problem. The mechanism is uncertainty. When connection is withdrawn without clear explanation, the mind searches for the behavior that caused it. You replay the conversation, monitor the other person's mood, and begin adjusting yourself to restore peace. Eventually, you may comply before a request is even made because you have learned what disagreement costs. This is different from someone taking healthy space. A person may need time to calm down and can communicate that directly. Punishment is less clear. It keeps you guessing. It makes emotional access conditional on obedience. Machiavelli understood the force of absence, distance, and selective favor. Attention can be used as a reward, and withdrawal can become a warning. When approval is distributed unpredictably, people often work harder to earn it, even when the relationship is making them smaller. The uncertainty is often more effective than an argument. Anger can be answered. Silence leaves you searching. You inspect every word, offer explanations nobody requested, and start treating peace as something that must be purchased. That is how a reaction becomes a training system. Watch what happens after you say no. Does the person return to the issue with respect, or do they create a fog of coldness until you surrender? Do you feel free to disagree, or are you managing their emotional weather to avoid consequences? Do not rush to repair a peace you did not break. You can acknowledge tension without accepting blame for another person's chosen punishment. If you want to discuss what happened, speak directly. I will not guess what you need. A boundary is not an attack. You stop chasing every change in tone. You stop treating silence as evidence against you. You stop negotiating with an atmosphere. That is not emotional distance, it is emotional sovereignty. Number 7. The final lever is the story you tell yourself. The deepest form of control does not require a person to remain in the room. Once their expectations have been repeated often enough, you begin to carry them internally. You anticipate disappointment. You censor your own preferences. You explain away discomfort because admitting the pressure would require a change. The mechanism is internalized authority. Outside influence becomes strongest when it is mistaken for personal judgment. A borrowed fear starts speaking in your voice. A role assigned by someone else begins to feel like your nature. You may say, "This is just who I am," when the sentence actually means, "This is what I learned would keep me accepted." This is why detection must move beyond obvious phrases. Ask what happens inside you before you answer. Do you feel clear, or do you feel compelled to prevent a reaction? Would you make the same choice if nobody could praise or punish you for it? If the person could never know your decision, would it still be yours? Machiavelli's lesson is not that every relationship is a battlefield. It is that appearances, incentives, and fears shape conduct more deeply than people admit. If you want to protect your judgment, you must examine not only the hand applying pressure, but the belief that keeps reaching for the pressure. Look for borrowed language in your thoughts. I should not make things difficult. I am responsible for everyone's comfort. If I disappoint them, I will lose everything. These beliefs may contain a fragment of truth, but a fragment can still be used as a chain. The goal is not to become suspicious of every kindness or to turn every request into a hidden plot. The goal is to recognize the difference between a choice that feels difficult and a choice that has been emotionally engineered. One asks for courage. The other asks for recovery of perspective. Test the story by removing the audience. If there were no praise for being agreeable and no punishment for being independent, what would remain? If the answer changes completely, the pressure has already entered the decision. That discovery is not a reason for shame. It is evidence that the decision can be examined again. You become harder to move when you can feel pressure without obeying it, receive praise without performing for it, and face disappointment without abandoning yourself. You become less readable not by hiding your humanity, but by refusing to let every emotion become an instruction. That is the identity of the summit, a person who can be influenced by truth, reason, and genuine care, but not quietly commandeered by guilt, confusion, or fear. A controlled mind asks, how do I keep them satisfied? A clear mind asks, what decision remains sound when the pressure is removed? Remember what you saw today. Guilt turns a boundary into a character test. Flattery can attach praise to a hidden demand. Urgency can steal the time required for judgment. Obligation can turn a favor into an unspoken debt. False choices can hide the option to refuse. Withdrawal can train you to obey before anyone asks, and the deepest lever is the story you repeat until another person's expectation sounds like your own thought. When you notice the pull, pause before explaining yourself. Name the pressure. Widen the options. Give the decision enough time to become yours again. You stop reacting to the mood. You stop defending your worth. You stop accepting a frame simply because it was offered with confidence. The goal is not to become cold or suspicious. It is to become clear. This is about recognizing guilt, flattery, urgency, obligation, narrowed choices, and emotional punishment when they are used on you, not using them on anyone. Awareness should make you steadier, not bitter, more discerning, not cruel. The point is protection, not domination. Remember the words you wrote at the beginning, I pause before I choose. Let that sentence become the space between someone else's pressure and your response, where your judgment can return. And while you are there, the pinned comment holds Virtue, the Machiavelli doctrine, a complete system for forging a mind no one can easily read or move, while helping you see more clearly the motives and patterns of the people around you. It belongs to the same work, strengthening your own mind and becoming more discerning about the company surrounding it. If this sharpens something in you, subscribe. The next lesson goes deeper. When the strings become visible, your hands return to the wheel.